The night I found out my wife was hiding something from me, I wasn't snooping, I wasn't even suspicious, not really. I was just looking for my watch. The one she had given me for our 10th anniversary, a beautiful silver Rolex that I rarely wore because I was terrified of scratching it. I had placed it on top of my dresser that morning, but now it was gone. I knew it hadn't just walked off, and since Emily always had a habit of moving my things, I assumed she had put it somewhere safe, like she always did. So I did what any husband would do. I started looking. I checked the drawers, the bathroom counter, even under the bed. Nothing. Frustrated, I walked into our walk-in closet, pushing past her neatly arranged shoes and color-coded clothes. I pulled open the top drawer where she sometimes kept little things of mine when she cleaned up. As I rummaged through it, my fingers brushed against something cold, something metallic. Not my watch. A small black box, the kind that expensive jewelry comes in. I wasn't sure why, but my heart rate picked up a little as I pulled it out. The box was unmarked, with no brand or tags, nothing to indicate where it came from. I opened it, expecting to find earrings or maybe a necklace. But instead, lying inside on a soft cushion of black velvet, was a hotel key card. For a long moment, I just stared at it, my brain refusing to register what I was looking at. A hotel key card, tucked away in my wife's drawer, hidden under a stack of folded scarves. There was no reason for it to be there. No logical explanation that I could think of. We hadn't stayed in a hotel in over a year. There was no upcoming trip planned. And Emily sure never mentioned anything about needing a hotel room. A strange coldness spread through my chest as I turned the card over in my hand. No logo. No number. Just a plain, blank key card that could belong to any hotel in the city. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it wasn't hers. Maybe it had been there for ages, something she picked up accidentally. But that didn't make sense. Emily was obsessively neat. She never kept junk around. If this key card was in her drawer, it was there for a reason. I heard the front door open. Emily was home. For a second, I considered putting the box back exactly where I found it, acting like nothing had happened. But the weight of the key card in my hand made that impossible. My grip tightened around it as I closed the drawer and stepped out of the closet, my mind already spinning with questions I didn't want to ask but knew I had to. Emily walked into the bedroom, dropping her purse onto the bed. She looked tired, her hair slightly messy, her makeup worn from the long day. When she saw me standing there, her expression shifted. Just for a second, something flickered across her face, so fast I almost missed it. "Hey," she said, forcing a smile. "What's up?" I held up the box. "Found this in your drawer." Her smile froze. A flicker of something panic, maybe, flashed in her eyes before she covered it up. "Oh, where did you—" She stopped herself, clearing her throat. "That's nothing. Where did you even find that?" "In the closet." I flipped the lid open, showing her the key card. "Want to tell me why my wife has a hotel key hidden in her drawer?" She laughed. A short, forced sound. "Seriously, Daniel? You think I'm, what? Having an affair? That's ridiculous." I wasn't accusing her. Not yet. But the way she jumped straight to defending herself without me even saying the word made my stomach twist. "I don't know what to think," I said slowly, watching her reaction. "So why don't you explain it to me?" She hesitated. Just for a second. Then she reached for the key card, but I pulled it back. "Daniel," she sighed, running a hand through her hair. "It's nothing, okay? I helped a coworker book a hotel last week. She was having issues with her husband, needed a place to stay for a couple of nights. I picked up the key for her and must have forgotten about it." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something about the way she was talking, the slight tremor in her voice, the way she avoided my eyes, it didn't sit right with me. Emily was a good liar when she wanted to be. "Which coworker?" I asked. She blinked. "What?" "The coworker who needed a place to stay. What's her name?" There was another hesitation, too brief for most people to catch, but I saw it. "Michelle," she said finally. "You don't know her. She works in a different department." I nodded slowly. "Then you won't mind if I call Michelle and ask her, right?" Her face paled. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to find a way out. Finally, she shook her head and let out a nervous chuckle. "You know what, Daniel? If you're going to sit here interrogating me over a stupid key card, I don't even want to have this conversation." She turned away, walking toward the bathroom, but I grabbed her wrist, not hard, just enough to make her stop. "Look me in the eye and tell me you're not lying," I said quietly. She froze. For a long moment, she didn't say anything, didn't turn around. Then, finally, she yanked her arm free and stormed into the bathroom, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, staring at the closed door, my grip tightening around the keycard. I didn't need to call Michelle. I already knew the truth. I didn't sleep that night. Emily came to bed eventually, slipping under the covers without a word, her back turned to me. The room was silent except for the steady ticking of the clock on the nightstand. I laid there with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling, my mind running through every possible scenario. Maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe it really was just a favor for a friend. But if that were the case, why didn't she just say so immediately? Why hesitate? Why try to grab the key card from my hand? I wanted to believe her, but the doubt had already settled in, and no matter how hard I tried to push it away, it wasn't going anywhere. By the time morning rolled around, I had already made up my mind. I needed to find out for myself. Emily was in the work when I grabbed my keys and left the house. I didn't even bother with breakfast. My stomach felt twisted, my hands restless on the steering wheel as I drove into town. There was no name on the key card, no number, but there was only one place in the city that used plain black key cards like this, the Hamilton Suites. It was a high-end hotel, the kind of place where business executives and wealthy tourists stayed, the kind of place where a married woman wouldn't have any reason to be unless she had something to hide. I pulled into the parking lot, took a deep breath, and walked through the revolving doors. The lobby smelled like expensive cologne and freshly brewed coffee. A man in a dark suit stood behind the front desk, typing away at a computer. I forced my expression into something neutral as I approached him, pulling the key card from my pocket. "Morning," I said, placing the card on the counter. "I think I left something in my room yesterday. Can you remind me which one this is for?" The receptionist barely looked up. "What's the name on the reservation?" I hadn't thought about that. I glanced at the card like the answer might magically appear on it. My boss booked it for me. Could you just check the system?" Now he looked up. His expression was polite, professional, but there was a hint of suspicion in his eyes. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't give out that information without verification." I needed to think fast. "Listen, man, my wife will kill me if I don't get this sorted out. She booked the room under her name for our anniversary, but I forgot the number." I let out a nervous laugh. "You know how it is, right?" He hesitated. For a second, I thought it wouldn't work, but then he sighed and glanced at his screen. "All right, let me check." I watched as he typed something in, then scrolled through the list. My fingers tapped against the counter as I waited, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then his eyebrows lifted slightly, his eyes flicking to the screen, and I knew before he even spoke that I wasn't going to like what I heard. "The key belongs to room 214, he said. "The reservation is still active." Still active. That meant the room was still in use. That meant someone was there. I swallowed hard, nodding quickly as I grabbed the key card and stepped away from the desk before he could ask any more questions. The elevator ride to the second floor felt like it lasted an hour. My hands felt clammy, my mouth dry as I walked down the carpeted hallway, counting the doors until I reached 214. I stood in front of it, staring at the handle, my fingers tightening around the card. If I swiped it, if I opened this door, there was no going back. Whatever was on the other side, I would have to face it. I took a deep breath and slid the card through the lock. The light turned green. The door clicked open. I stepped inside. The first thing that hit me was the smell, faint traces of perfume, mixed with something else. The bed was unmade, the sheets tangled, the pillows pushed to the side. On the nightstand, there was an empty wine glass. And then I saw it. Emily's purse. It was sitting on the desk, right next to her phone. She was here. Not last week, not yesterday, right now. Before I could even process what I was looking at, I heard movement from the bathroom. The sound of running water stopped, followed by the soft creak of the door opening. Emily walked out, wearing nothing but a towel. Her eyes met mine. For a split second, there was only silence. No words, no explanations, just the raw, undeniable truth hanging in the air between us. Her face went pale. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Then, before I could react, before I could even breathe, another figure stepped out of the bathroom behind her. A man. Taller than me, younger than me, his hair still damp from the shower. He froze when he saw me. I don't remember moving. "Who are you?" I growled, my grip tightening. "You trying to pry my fingers off?" Emily grabbed my arm again, her voice frantic. "Daniel, stop. Stop it." I let go, shoving him away. My chest was heaving, my hands clenched into fists as I turned to face her. She looked terrified, her eyes wide, her lips trembling as she wrapped her arms around herself. "Say something," I demanded. She opened her mouth. then closed it. I nodded slowly. That's what I thought. I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. I don't remember walking through the hallway or taking the stairs down to the lobby. My body moved on its own, my mind still trying to catch up with what I had just seen. The image of Emily standing in that towel, the man behind her, his face frozen in panic, it was burned into my brain. My hands were still shaking, my heart pounding so hard in my chest it felt like it might explode. People in the lobby turned their heads as I passed, probably noticing the look on my face, but I didn't care. I stepped outside, gulping in the fresh air, trying to calm the rage boiling inside me. But I wasn't calm, not even close. A few minutes later, the sound of hurried footsteps came from behind me. I didn't have to turn around to know it was her. Daniel, wait. Emily's voice was breathless, desperate, like she actually thought she had a right to explain herself. Please, just stop. I stopped walking but didn't turn around. My fists clenched at my sides as I forced myself to take slow, deep breaths, trying to keep myself from losing control. You don't get to tell me what to do, I said, my voice cold and steady. She hesitated for a second before stepping in front of me, her face red, her hair still damp from the shower. She had thrown on some clothes, jeans, and a wrinkled blouse, probably whatever she could grab in a hurry. Her lips parted like she was about to say something, but no words came out. Say it, I demanded, finally meeting her eyes. Tell me whatever excuse you've got. I could use a laugh. Daniel, it's not what you think. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Oh, that's rich. Not what I think. I walked into a hotel room. Emily, I saw you in a towel. I saw him. What exactly do you think I think? Her face crumpled for a second before she quickly composed herself. It was a mistake, she whispered. It just happened, but it didn't mean anything. I stared at her in disbelief, shaking my head. Didn't mean anything? You've been lying to me for weeks, sneaking around, hiding hotel key cards in drawers, and you expect me to believe this was some random accident? Who is he? Emily flinched. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. Say his name. She swallowed hard, her hands gripping the hem of her blouse like she needed something to hold on to. Daniel, Say his name, Emily. Tyler. She finally choked out. His name is Tyler. Something about hearing it made everything worse. As if knowing his name made him real, made this betrayal more solid, more permanent. I could see her bracing herself, waiting for me to explode, but I didn't. I just stared at her, my jaw tight, my chest rising and falling with each heavy breath. How long? I asked. She shook her head. It doesn't matter. How long? She hesitated, eyes darting away. That was all the answer I needed. Jesus, I muttered, running a hand over my face. Months? Years? How long have you been lying to me in my own house? Emily took a shaky breath. A few months, she admitted quietly. I didn't mean for it to happen. Don't say it just happened. I cut in sharply. People don't just trip and fall into bed with someone. You made a choice. Over and over again. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt nothing but disgust. Daniel, I love you, she whispered. I barked out a humorless laugh. No, you don't. You don't do this to someone you love. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away like her touch would burn me. Please, she begged. Just come home. Let's talk. I shook my head, stepping back. There's nothing to talk about, Emily. You threw everything away, and for what? Some guy? Some fling. She bit her lip, shaking her head furiously. It wasn't like that. It doesn't matter, I snapped. It's done. Her face crumpled completely this time, her shoulders shaking. Daniel, please, she whispered. I turned away and walked to my car, leaving her standing there on the sidewalk, crying. I didn't go home. The idea of stepping inside that house, walking past the kitchen where we used to have breakfast, sleeping in the bed where she probably sent him messages, breathing the same air as the woman who had been lying to me for months, it made my stomach turn. Instead, I drove. No destination, no plan, just me and the road, trying to drown out the storm of thoughts in my head. The rage wasn't fading. If anything, it was growing, pressing against my ribs, demanding to be let out. Emily had cheated. She had thrown away everything we built, everything I gave her, for some guy named Tyler. A name I didn't know until today, a name I would never forget. And what did she do when I caught her? She cried. She begged. As if tears could wash away betrayal. As if her regret mattered now. At some point, I pulled into a parking lot. It was nearly empty, Just a couple of cars parked near a 24-hour diner. I sat there with my hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to figure out what I was supposed to do next. Divorce? Of course. That was a given. But that wasn't enough. She didn't get to walk away from this with just some legal papers and a few months of inconvenience. No, she needed to feel this. She needed to understand what it meant to have her entire world ripped apart. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and called the one person I knew would help me without hesitation. Daniel. The voice on the other end sounded groggy, like he had just woken up. Man, it's almost 1 a.m. What's going on? Ethan, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Emily cheated. There was a pause. Then, his voice sharpened. What? I exhaled slowly, gripping the phone tighter. I caught her. In a hotel. With some guy named Tyler. Silence. Then, where are you? Diner on Oak Ridge. Near the highway. Stay there. I'm coming. I hung up and leaned back in my seat, closing my eyes. Ethan had been my best friend since college. The kind of guy who never sugar-coated things, never played the middle ground. He was going to be pissed. Probably more than I was. He had never liked Emily much, thought she was too self-centered, too entitled. But he kept it to himself because he knew I loved her. And now? Now he was going to lose his mind. 15 minutes later, his car pulled up next to mine. He climbed out, dressed in sweatpants and an old hoodie, his hair a mess. But his expression was sharp, his jaw clenched as he slammed the door shut and walked over. Tell me everything. I did. Every detail. The key card. The hotel room. The look on her face when she realized she was caught. The guy standing behind her, frozen in place like a deer in headlights. The way she tried to explain it, tried to downplay it like it wasn't the biggest betrayal of my life. Ethan listened without interrupting, his expression darkening with every word. When I finished, he let out a long breath, shaking his head. Unbelievable. She had everything. A husband who actually gave a damn. And she threw it away for some random guy? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Ethan crossed his arms, his eyes narrowing. You want to get back at her, don't you? I met his gaze. Yeah. A slow nod. All right. Let's burn it down. We sat there for the next hour, coming up with a plan. I wasn't interested in screaming matches or public humiliation. I wanted something colder, something that would hit her where it hurt the most. Emily had always been obsessed with appearances, with making sure people saw her as this perfect, accomplished woman. A good wife. A loyal partner. She had built her entire identity around that image. So I was going to shatter it. First, the evidence. I had already taken pictures of the hotel room before I left. The unmade bed, the wine glasses, her purse sitting next to his shirt on the desk. It wasn't just about proving the affair, it was about taking control of the narrative. Second, the exposure. Emily was close with her family, always putting on the act of being the perfect daughter, the loving wife. So I made sure they saw the truth. I sent the pictures to her parents, her brother, and a few of her closest friends, along with a simple message. This is who Emily really is. No explanation. No context. Just the truth in its rawest form. Third, the financial hit. We had a joint account, but I had my own separate savings, money she didn't have access to. Before she could even think about playing the let's work through this game, I transferred everything into a new account and froze the joint one. She wasn't getting a dime from me. Not now. Not ever. And finally, the final blow, her job. Emily worked at a law firm, a place that prided itself on reputation and integrity. I knew for a fact that office affairs weren't just frowned upon, they were grounds for termination. I didn't have to do much. Just sent the pictures to her boss with a polite email. Thought you should know what your employees are doing in their free time. By the time the sun started rising, it was done. The messages had been sent. The damage was set in motion. All that was left was to wait. And when the calls started coming in, when Emily's name started lighting up my screen over and over again, I didn't answer. Let her drown in the mess she made. The first time she called, I ignored it. The second time, I let it ring. By the fifth, I turned off my phone. I had no interest in hearing her voice, no patience for whatever weak excuse she had prepared. She could sit in the wreckage of her choices and figure out what to do next. Ethan and I had finished our coffee in silence before he finally clapped a hand on my shoulder, told me to get some rest, and drove off. I sat in my car for another hour, staring at nothing, my mind blank. I had done what needed to be done, but there was still one thing left, something I couldn't avoid. I had to talk to her. Not because I wanted closure, not because I cared about hearing her side of the story, but because I wanted her to see the consequences of her actions in real time. She needed to face me, to look into my eyes and know that everything she had was gone. When I finally walked into the house, the first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. Normally, Emily would have music playing in the kitchen or the TV humming in the background, filling the space with noise. But now, nothing. Just silence. I stepped into the living room and found her sitting on the couch, her phone clutched in both hands, her face streaked with tears. The moment she saw me, she shot up from her seat, her voice cracking. "Daniel, thank God. Sit down." She flinched at my tone, but obeyed, sinking back onto the couch. I stood in front of her, arms crossed, watching as she wiped her face with the back of her hand. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she took a deep breath. "I know you're angry. I know I hurt you, but we need to talk about this." I tilted my head slightly, staring at her like she was a stranger. "Talk about what?" "About us. About what happens next." I let out a slow breath, nodding to myself. "You don't get it, do you?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "There is no us anymore, Emily. You ended that the moment you decided to sneak around behind my back." Her face crumpled. "I made a mistake." "No," I interrupted, my voice steady. "A mistake is forgetting to lock the door. A mistake is saying something stupid in an argument. What you did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A repeated, conscious choice." She shook her head, tears spilling again. "I was lost, Daniel. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted." I laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "So your solution was to sleep with someone else?" She flinched. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "Stop saying that," I snapped, stepping closer. "You planned it. You booked a hotel. You met him there. You lied to my face every single day while you carried on with him. That's not something that just happens, Emily." Her shoulders shook, and she covered her face with her hands. "I hate myself," she whispered. I stared at her, unmoved. "Not as much as I hate you." She let out a strangled sob, but I kept going. "Do you even realize what you've lost? Do you understand that I will never look at you the same way again? That every single person in your life knows exactly who you are now?" Her breath hitched. "You told them." I nodded. "Your parents, your brother, your friends, your job. They all know." She let out a small, broken sound. "Daniel, why would you do that?" I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. "Because you deserved it." She buried her face in her hands again, shaking. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was her uneven breathing. Then she looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. "Do you want a divorce?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." She bit her lip, nodding slowly, like she was trying to accept it. Can we at least try to talk through it first?" I stared at her, feeling nothing but disgust. "Talk through what?" "There's nothing left. The woman I married doesn't exist anymore." She reached out, but I stepped back before she could touch me. Her hand hovered in the air for a second before she let it drop into her lap. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. "You already did." She broke completely then, sobbing into her hands, her whole body trembling. I watched her for a few moments, my chest hollow, my mind already elsewhere. Then I turned and walked away. Packing up my things didn't take long. I had never been the kind of person to hoard sentimental junk, and now, more than ever, I wanted nothing to do with anything that reminded me of her. The wedding photos, the anniversary gifts, the little notes she used to leave me, they all went into the trash. I wasn't keeping anything. The house itself didn't even feel like mine anymore. Every room, every piece of furniture, every damn object in this place had been tainted by the fact that she had slept with another man while pretending to love me. Emily sat on the couch, watching in silence as I moved through the house, taking only what was mine. She didn't try to stop me, didn't try to argue. The weight of everything had finally settled on her shoulders, and she knew there was nothing left to say. When I walked into the bedroom, I hesitated for just a second before opening the closet. My side was almost empty already, but hers was still full, neatly hung dresses, shoes lined up perfectly, perfume bottles arranged on the dresser. I reached out, grabbed one of the dresses she used to wear on our dates, and tossed it onto the floor. Then another, and another. I wasn't sure why I was doing it, why I needed to see them scattered like that, but it felt like the only thing I could control right now. As I was about to turn away, something caught my eye. A small black bag tucked in the corner behind her shoes. I pulled it out and unzipped it, my stomach tightening when I saw what was inside. Lingerie. New, expensive, things I had never seen before. I didn't have to ask who she bought them for. Emily's voice broke the silence from the doorway. "Daniel, please don't do this." I didn't turn around. Do what? Leave like this? Hating me. I let out a slow breath, zipping the bag shut before tossing it onto the bed. You think I owe you something? After everything? She stepped further into the room, her arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I don't want you to walk away like this. Like none of it ever meant anything. I finally turned to face her, my expression unreadable. It meant something, but it doesn't anymore. Her face crumpled. I was stupid. I was selfish. I wish I could take it all back. You can't. She reached out, hesitated, then dropped her hand. I don't want to lose you, Daniel. I studied her for a long moment, then shook my head. You already did. I picked up my bag, walked past her, and didn't look back. By the time I reached the front door, I could hear her crying, but I didn't stop. I stepped outside, letting the door close behind me, and walked to my car. The air felt different, lighter, like I had finally let go of something that had been suffocating me for months. I got in, started the engine, and drove away. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't care.